Your Excellency, thank you so much for giving us time out of your busy schedule.
Well, thank you very much.
Let me thank you on behalf of Afghan Zariza for liking and reviewing our magazine and website.
I love it. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Plus, sitting down for an interview, an exclusive interview with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
To start with the interview, I would like to pick few words from your dispatch from Kabul in October 2013.
When I first arrived. Yes.
Exactly. When you were asked or offered the post to be a Canadian representative in Afghanistan, you said that you will continue or you feel to continue the legacy of Canadians in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Those who were here before you, mm-hmm. and notably those who lost their lives in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. Can you please elaborate a little bit on what is Canadian legacy?
Mm. Absolutely, I would be more than happy to. You know, I think Afghanistan feels for many Canadians to be a part of us, to be a part of our history. Most school children in Canada know Afghanistan, they know Kandahar, they know regions of Afghanistan almost as well as they know some regions of Canada. Okay. We came early in 2001. Our military came to support the process at that time. We have been here since then in a military mission, initially in a combat mission in the south, in particular in Kandahar, some here in Kabul, working with the international forces and with the Afghan interim government. And then, of course, after our combat mission, we moved to a training mission. So we've had both an involvement on the security side, both in the struggle, the fighting, but also, I think, as importantly, working with the Afghan security forces to help the Afghans themselves, the Afghan security forces, to develop their own capability, to take on the responsibility for security. So I think that aspect has been very important to Canadians. It's been very important, certainly to our military. Mm-hmm. I think they've learned a lot from working alongside Afghans. I think we're very proud of the role we played in training both the Afghan National Army and also the Afghan National Police Force. We've had our policing mission here where our Royal Canadian Mounted Police, our police forces have come and worked with the ANP to help develop skills and the ability for the police to work in the communities throughout Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. We've had a very active development program. We've worked with the Minister of Public Health on healthcare services. We certainly have done a lot of work on the education side, developing schools for both boys and girls. Okay. And we've done a lot of work with civil society. So there's many aspects to the Canadian partnership with Afghanistan over the last 12 years. And I'm just really lucky to have been chosen to be the ambassador at a time when we're going through quite a big transition with the security change and with the political change now with the election coming. Mm-hmm. So the legacy is a very deep one. It crosses the range of government and, mm-hmm. and society, social society. And so I've got a wonderful base to build on. But also, it's very important to me that Canadians continue to care about Afghanistan and continue to be involved in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. So I also want to feed back to my country all the good things that are happening here, mm-hmm. and why it's important that we continue in this partnership and continue the legacy.
Great. In your dispatch, you also have mentioned that this post will be fulfilling and challenging for you. How do you find it? How you found it fulfilling and how you found it challenging?
It is very fulfilling. I sometimes don't want to tell people how much I love my job, mm-hmm. in case they try to get my job and I have more competition. I've asked my government to extend me another year, at least, because the job is very fulfilling. Well, mostly the biggest aspect there is I love working with Afghan people. I love the spirit and the resilience and the determination and the fact that so many people are coming together to rebuild the country and to create the kind of society that Afghans want and, of course, so badly deserve after many decades of conflict. Challenging? I think what's challenging more than anything is there's just not enough hours in the day. I mean, this is such an important year with the security transition, the political transition. It's going to bring about an economic transition. And so I think for me, there are so many important files to be working on that it's the most challenging thing is to try to organize the day and get the work done. I think one of the areas where we really do need to focus, and we will do that probably more after the election, is on economic development. Because there were pieces of legislation that we were hoping would have been passed by Parliament. That didn't happen. But so with the new Parliament now and with the new government, I'm hopeful the legislation will be put in place, the mining legislation, anti-money laundering, these things that can help build a business environment, because I think the next stage in the Canada-Afghan partnership is one of economic partnership, of business partnership. So I'm a little frustrated I can't get onto that, but it'll come soon, and we'll begin that work more maybe in the fall when the election process is completed.
Exactly. Thank you. You also have written in your dispatch that most of the time, most of your time you'll give with to communicating with Afghans, Canadians, and the international community on your position or the Canadian government position in regards to the human rights, specifically the women and girls' rights, good governance, and freedom of press. Would you please tell us the position of the Canadian government in regards to these three highlighted issues?
Well, I think obviously as a female ambassador, I'm very interested in women and girls' rights.
Sure.
But also for my government, and particularly my Minister of Foreign Affairs, he has identified this as one of his top priorities, women and girls' empowerment throughout the world. So I have a great opportunity, because of his support, to work with Afghan women and Afghan men to ensure that women have the opportunity to become educated. They have access to health care, and we work very closely with Minister Dalil on establishing health clinics for women. There's been great success in this area. And I think also to help encourage women to become active politically. So all of these areas are areas where we have been concentrating and where I have great support from my government to use embassy resources to work with women's organizations, to work with the Minister of Women's Affairs, to work with the media, and to work with many others in society to help encourage a greater role for women in Afghan society. With regard to good governance, I think it's very... it's very clear that any successful country has to have good, solid institutions, both in terms of its electorate, in terms of the election process, in terms of the government ministries, but also in terms of civil society. So we work very hard to encourage active civil society, and we work very closely with the ministries here on a whole host of issues. And then thirdly, freedom of press. Well, of course, I've been really impressed since I've come to Afghanistan how active the media is here and the many different media outlets that there are. It simply means freedom of press, exactly as I said, that the press are free to report in an unencumbered way without being influenced by special interests and to present a balanced picture to the readership, to their viewers, of what is happening in the society. Freedom of press is a critical pillar for any progressive society. So I see very positive results, very substantial progress in all these three areas here in Afghanistan. But there are areas, of course, where we will continue to work with Afghans.
With the Afghan government.
Yeah.
Thank you. We are in 2014. This year has been known as a very challenging year for Afghanistan in terms of international withdrawal. Canadians' engagement and plans also end in 2014. So what are your post-2014 plans for Afghanistan, specifically in terms of women and girls' rights, good governance, and freedom of press?
I think in terms of women and girls' rights, one area where we're working very intensely right now is in the area of the election and encouraging women to get out and vote, encouraging the female candidates both in the provincial councils and also to see wonderfully three vice presidential candidates. I think we'll continue to do that next year with the parliamentary elections, to continue to support women candidates to get out and represent and have the women's voice heard. We'll certainly continue with that. We will definitely continue to promote literacy for women. I think the literacy rate for women right now in Afghanistan is around 13 or 15%. I think much more work needs to be done there, and we'll continue to work on that. We'll continue to work, of course, in the area of health. I think, when you look at malnutrition, which is a major issue now for young children in Afghanistan, to empower women to have the information that they need as mothers so that they can ensure they have healthier boys and girls, which will be better for Afghan society in the future. So these areas are areas where we'll continue to work. On good governance, I think it's going to be working with the new government, as we have very much with President Karzai and his ministers, on the new legislations that are coming forward, as I mentioned, the mining legislation, anti-money laundering, those types of things, to try to get that business environment, that much more positive investment environment, because I think that's the next big step for Afghanistan, is to create that economy, which Afghanistan can, because of its rich resources, because of its agriculture, because of its very talented people in the craft area. There's lots of opportunity, but we've got to establish a solid economic environment where investors want to come and invest and where business wants to do business. So we'll be working in that area. In terms of the press, I meet regularly now. Just in the last couple of months, I've started meeting with Afghan press representatives from the media. I'm going to continue to, I hope, have lively communications, both in terms of talking about the issues that are important for us, but also talking to media representatives about what they see as the issues in Afghanistan and how they're dealing with them. So we'll continue to work very closely with various segments of Afghan media, and also to watch carefully that the media has that sort of free environment that they need in order to be doing the job necessary, so that the citizens are getting a true picture of the issues, getting deep analysis of the policies and of the programs of the government and the issues in society. So we'll continue, I think, to have an active communication with the Afghan media on a whole host of issues.
Okay, thank you. Gender equality has been one of the issues most talked in Afghanistan, and at some point not welcomed as well. As a woman yourself, and being in a political position, and also based on your latest experience in Afghanistan, what do you think the gender reality, the ground reality for the gender equality has been changed in Afghanistan, or is in regards to women empowerment, or is it status quo intact?
Well, I think that I was at a meeting this morning with a group of female candidates who are running for the provincial council, and one of the things I was saying to them was the fact that really Afghanistan, I think, should be congratulated for having made fantastic progress in the last 10 years. The Afghan constitution guarantees equal access for men and women to education and healthcare. That's very substantial. The EVA law, the Violence Against Women law, is in effect now. Presidential decree, but it's in effect. We have to make sure that the law is implemented throughout all of the provinces, and there's work being done on that now by the Minister of Women's Affairs. They're soon going to be releasing their report. They've released it in Dari, and I think they're going to be releasing it again in English. So we will have the report that talks about the progress of the implementation. We've got 8 million, there are 8 million kids in school, and 40% of them are girls. There's over 2,000 health clinics that are supporting mothers and women with their children. I think there is a very substantial progress, and I think people have to take heart from that progress. Now what I think we have to do is make sure that that progress is anchored and solid, and that there's no falling back of any of that progress. And now we have to move forward from there. And I think we're seeing it with these elections. As I said, 3 vice presidential candidates, 308 provincial council candidates are women. This is real progress. And I think we need to continue to work with the female parliamentarians to make sure that they have the information that they need so that they can represent not just women, but all of their constituents. So I think there's more work to do, but there has been real progress. Now we have to make sure that EVA law is implemented in all of the provinces, and that's going to require some more work, I think, with the Ministry of Justice, getting a strong judicial system, a strong legal system. We definitely need more women in the police force. Minister Dowdseye, the Minister of Interior, has said that he is going to double the quota from 5,000 women to 10,000. So far, they've only been able to get 2,000. And I think one of the issues that he's looking at is the work environment for women in the police force and how that work environment has to improve. So I think that's another area where we all need to focus and support the minister in his goal. And then lastly, I would say the religious community. There's a wonderful, active, vibrant religious community in Afghanistan. And I think we need the religious leaders to come out very much supporting women and greater participation of women in the society. And each time I meet with them, and I met with a wonderful religious leader this morning, you know, whether it's the Ulema Council, whether it's the Minister of Hajj, whether it's various religious leaders throughout the country, they need to be coming out and supporting women much more strongly.
Great. Your Excellency, you mentioned in your words before that literacy is one of the fields that needs more focus in. And as you know, education is a big challenge for Afghanistan, specifically for women and girls, because, and it's also understood, one of the obstacles in front of their or against their empowerment. And you also may know that each year a large number of schoolgirls drop down from high school education. How can you make sure, or how can Canadian government make sure that these girls continue their education, go for the higher education, and achieve their goals in future?
You know, I have to admit that I didn't realize that a large number of girls were dropping out of high school. And so I really appreciate hearing that from you. I guess I would have some strong views on what we need to do about that. So I think one of the first things is we need to work with the Ministry of Women's Affairs, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Higher Education. And we need to find out why. Why are these girls dropping out of school? Is it too difficult? Are there demands coming from their family? Do they need to work? Are they going into early marriage? What is the reason that they are dropping out of school? Because education is such an important tool for the future. So I think we first need to find out why, working with the different ministries. Then I think we have to look at ways in which we can encourage them to stay and finish their high school diploma. And I think there we need to be giving them role models, women like yourself, even women like myself, even though I'm a foreigner. Nonetheless, I think the young girls need to see women before them, older than they are, active in the society, playing a role that requires that you have a higher level of education. So I think we have to be maybe working with the media to promote those kinds of role models and get those images out there of women using their high school degree to contribute to society, to be part of their employment, of their job future, of their career. And then lastly, so finding out why, addressing those issues, putting in place role models, working with the media to do that. And then lastly, I think we have to demonstrate that if you get that degree, there are job opportunities. If you get your diploma, there will be job opportunities for you, and that's where I think it comes back to economic development. And I've talked to a number of the ministers in the government about ways in which we can be promoting trade schools, vocational schools, teaching young high school students and university students how to start their own business. I think we've got to demonstrate to the young people that if you stay in school and get that skill, there will be job opportunities for you. So I think that there are a whole host of things we need to do, and I really thank you for bringing that to my attention, because I'm putting it on my list now.
Sure. I'll add to what obstacles you just mentioned, whether you would like to know from other respective involved ministries as well, that a mix of all these reasons are behind the drop down of the girls from the school continuing their education. So it will be also good to add to your list to also speak to Ministry of Hajj and Religious Affairs, because they can play a major role in that. People, I mean, girls who cannot continue their education, they are mostly in the rural areas,
right?
In the villages. It's lack of school on one side, and that social support on the other side, which is lacking.
Okay.
So I would suggest you also make queries on that part as well.
Maybe we could look at doing another story on that in the future.
Sure.
Okay. We're making a work list for ourselves.
Sure. Okay. So coming to the election, a big event for Afghanistan. We have already started counting down the days for it.
I know.
And I would like to ask you about your thoughts on how you, as a woman, as a person who hold a position and representing a government in Afghanistan, how can you ensure women participation in election and their voting? Because I understand and everyone knows that less or more women are half of the Afghan population. So my question is, how would you ensure the participation and voting?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, my minister, Minister John Baird, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy for Canada, is very strong on women and girls' empowerment. And so he has said to me, Ambassador, you get out there and support Afghan women getting out to vote.
Yes,
so we have developed a seven-point, seven-pillar action plan. In keeping with Islam, it had to have 7 pillars. So first of all, I am doing a lot of provincial and regional outreach. I'm going to the north, to the west, and to the south, and talking to women about getting out to vote. Secondly, I've met with most of the presidential candidates to talk to them about women's issues and encouraging them to support women getting out to vote when they go out and do their campaigning. I've been providing them with some information about some of the issues women are facing, and so really encouraging them as they are out meeting with their constituency to talk about women getting out to vote. I have been doing, thirdly, advocacy to the Afghan government, meeting with all of the different ministries and talking to them about what they're doing to ensure that women are getting out to vote. I've met with Minister of Interior, Minister Dadzai, of course, Minister of Public Health. I've met with Minister of Women's Affairs. I met with Minister of Commerce recently, always talking about what we need to be doing to be making sure that we're getting women out to vote. I've also been working with civil society. I've been doing a lot of work with Afghan Women's Network and a number of the other women's organizations, but also other aspects of civil society like free and fair elections, to make sure that there are women observers, to make sure that they are going out and working with the different female candidates, but simply as well promoting the idea of women getting out to vote and having the security that they need to vote. We've been working with media. We've had a media campaign to talk to the radio, TV, and print media about women getting out to vote. We have also been working with the religious leaders. We put in place a special action plan to meet with religious leaders and to talk to them about getting women out to vote. And then lastly, the 7th pillar is working with the female parliamentarians. So I meet every couple of days with a different group of female parliamentarians to talk to them about their areas, their constituencies, because I cannot get out to all of the areas of Afghanistan, but they represent many regions and districts and councils, so I talk to them about what help do they need from us to encourage women to get out to vote. So we've been very active in the last couple of months on this, again, simply to support women getting out to vote. It doesn't matter who you vote for. We're not concerned who you vote for. We're just concerned that women get out and voice
and do vote.
And express their voice and do vote and exercise that right. And you know, we're delighted to see that there's 6.5 million women registered to vote. I think we're going to see a really good turnout. Security must be there though. Security must be there. And that's where Minister Dadzai and Minister of Interior and the police force really have to ensure that they are protecting women on the day of the election. And then of course the religious leaders must be reinforcing to the families, to the communities, to the women themselves, that this is part of the strong moral responsibility of every citizen to help choose their government.
Exactly. I think this is a great points that you mentioned in regards to achieving this great goal. Relevant to this election issue, you have been here since 8 months.
Six.
Okay, 6 months.
6 wonderful months, yes.
6 months. So you have been closely working with government offices, ministries, ministers,
yes,
and other high-rank officials. How do you rate President Karzai's administration or government in terms of the human rights, specifically the women's rights and girls issue, good governance, and also freedom of press?
Well, you know, I don't know that ambassadors rate politicians. It's probably a dangerous game, but I would have to say that I've had a very positive relationship with the Afghan government. I met with President Karzai soon after I came here. We had a great discussion about many of the issues, particularly women's issues, but also economic issues, because he knows that I'm very interested in business possibilities between Canada and Afghanistan. But I think, you know, as I said earlier, we have to recognize that there's been some real progress made, and President Karzai put in place the presidential decree to establish the EVA law. And he did that very strongly and knew that that would have an impact. The Minister of Women's Affairs have been acting on a whole host of areas. We work very closely with them. Likewise, as I said before, the Afghan Constitution guarantees equal access for men and women to education and to health services. So I think the foundation is there. I think the foundation truly is there. So the good governance, I think, has been put in place. I think we still have to struggle, every government has to struggle, to deal with issues of corruption, to make sure that all of their appointments are merit-based, to make sure that they are responding to the needs of the citizens. I think now we really have to look at how we build the Afghan economy. And that's going to be the next challenge of good governance, and get those pieces of legislation in place that are needed. But on human rights, because of the Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission, which is considered by the world community, by everyone, to have a top A rating. It is an exceptional organization that has done much. I think President Karzai, his ministers on a whole host of issues, broader even than human rights and women's rights, the whole governance of the society, have done some really substantial work. And I think from here, though, we need to move forward. And, you know, in terms of freedom of the press, as I mentioned earlier, I'm very impressed by what I'm seeing in Afghanistan in terms of an active media, active press. I know there are a number of different private stations, that's fine. They present a particular voice, but it's a very vibrant media core here in Afghanistan, just as with the civil society. Very vibrant, very active. These are fundamental to a society. So now in this year of political transition, everyone's being put to the test. This is the year when all of these things go through a shaky transition. Right. So we must hang tight and, as I said earlier, anchor that progress.
Exactly. Do you have any expectations from his successor, from the President Karzai's successor?
I'm sure everybody does. Lots of expectations. You know, I think one thing from the women's perspective, women's rights, I think the President Karzai's successor, whomever that may be, must make sure that the EVA law is implemented. That is absolute. That law must be implemented, and that we must have good, strong information, feedback on how the law is being applied, and working with the police force to make sure that's happening. So supporting the Minister of Interior to get a strong police force, a true community civilian police force throughout Afghanistan that is doing what police do, and that is protect people. So I think that those are two areas where, from the perspective of women's rights, the next successor to President Karzai must work very hard. And then, of course, the other areas, as I said before, we've got to start building that Afghan economy, make it stronger, get those resources developed, so that the Afghan people have a strong revenue base for many of their social programs. And then, of course, the issue of corruption. Obviously, every government has to deal with this. It's always a challenge. That has to be dealt with.
Exactly. Thank you. My next question, as you just mentioned the EVA law, my next question is based on that. You know that Afghanistan government, with the support from the international community, has taken some vital steps on the legal framework, especially in regards to the women's rights, which is the EVA law. Although it recently faced challenges, the law itself, in regards to the amendments and so many things. Besides amendments in criminal code of Afghanistan in regards to prohibition of testifying against relatives. This is one of the challenges for the women's rights. And the returning of stoning of women if they are found guilty on the of adultery. These are the 3 points that the government, I mean, one of the points the government attempted to either amend or repeal. Canadian government in recent years, ever since you have started operations from the embassy here, has been supporting the technique department of Ministry of Justice. And how can the Canadian government help protect the implementation of EVA law and the other 2 issues in regards to the women's rights?
Well, I will tell you that we will be working very hard in this area. We will be monitoring any of the new legislation coming forward. We will be working with people at the Ministry of Justice. We will be working with Afghan women's groups, with the Human Rights Commission, with others, working even with media, to identify any weaknesses or any flaws in the legislation. We will be looking at our position on those issues, those areas. We will be advocating strongly to the Ministry of Justice, to the Attorney General, to the Minister of Women's Affairs, wherever we have to go, again, on behalf of both our own position, but also the women in Afghanistan with whom we work, to make sure that the laws do support women and do protect them against violence, and do allow the appropriate judicial and legal system to work to ensure that women have that long-term protection. On the EVA law, we're going to continue to work with the Minister of Women's Affairs. We have been working very closely with them to date because of the Tokyo Mutual Accountability Accord to have the EVA law report published. We're going to continue to look at the implementation of that law. And as I said, this will be one of the things that the next president is really going to have to apply himself to and ensure that the Minister of Interior and the Minister of Justice as well are focused on. A great step has been taken with the law being established by a presidential decree. Another great step has been taken by issuing this last report. But now we have to, from that last report, ensure that the law itself is being well implemented throughout Afghanistan. So we'll be monitoring closely, we'll be working with Afghan women's groups, we'll be working with the Afghan government, and we will advocate on all of these positions, and I'm sure we will be releasing our statements to all of you as members of the media.
Thank you. How do you see Afghanistan's relation with Canada?
Oh, well, I see it as being very deep, frankly. I mean, as I said before, Canadian children know about Afghanistan. They know about Kandahar. They know Kabul. It has been a part of our daily life, and now it has been a part of our history for the last 12 years. So I think we have a very deep relationship. We have over 100,000 Afghans actually living in Canada, Afghan Canadians. There are many people here in Afghanistan from Canada, not just here at our embassy, but working in many places. Yes. And I think that now we are, our relationship, our friendship, our partnership is taking a new shape. You know, the security work has been completed. We are going to be continuing in our diplomatic relationship, our development relationship, and our business relationship. So I see it as a deep relationship, but one that is going to continue to grow in the coming years. We are here, and we will continue to work with Afghans to build this brighter future that I think Afghans are trying to build and so much deserve.
Thank you. I think that's we are proud of having good relations with Canadian government, and having you here in this post is even greater. Well,
thank you. We have benefited from this relationship too. You know, we have learned a lot from our experience here in Afghanistan in the last 12 years. I think that Afghanistan has helped Canada to learn to be even a stronger and better global citizen, global neighbor. Great. So we are in your debt as well.
Thank you. You also mentioned in your words about the security situation in Afghanistan, which is very important, specifically right now for the upcoming elections. It is also considered a barrier in front of any kind of development works in Afghanistan. What do you think, which elements can bring peace in Afghanistan?
Well, I think that we've seen the Afghan National Army in this last fighting season do very well, and I think that has given people a lot of confidence. I think that our military has been very pleased with the training that they have done with the Afghan Army. I think they feel that the security forces are capable and prepared to take on the challenge of security. I think security will be, and continue to be, one of the top priorities of the new president. It will have to be. I think where we need to continue to do more work is in the area of policing and establishing a professional, well-trained, well-supported police force throughout Afghanistan. I think that would go a long way to supporting the rural communities, the local communities. So I think much more work needs to be done in that area. Canada has committed to over $300 million for the next 3 years, $110 million a year, to support the Afghan National Security Forces. I'm confident that other members of the international community are going to continue to support the ANSF. And I think it, without question, is will have to be one of the top priorities of the new president.
Exactly.
But it is fundamental to building the economy as well. It's fundamental to protecting citizens, but in order to get investment into Afghanistan, in order to build the economy, we need to stabilize. We need to work to ensure that there is a sense of security.
Exactly. In the past days, our organization had arranged a roundtable meeting to discuss the challenges and achievements of women in the past decade. And a number of women came around the table and discussed, and one of the things they were specific about was for the next government especially, to ensure that these achievements that we have gained during the last 11, 12 years, they are there, I mean, they're ensured, they're safeguarded.
They're anchored.
What do you think, from your perspective, as a person who is working in Afghanistan, as a woman yourself, and from your work experience here, what do you think are the challenges women face now, and how do you envision the future of women in Afghanistan?
I think the challenges is probably 3 or 4 main challenges. I think security continues to be one of the biggest challenges that women face in Afghanistan. I think secondly, literacy is a big challenge for women. You know, with a very low rate, 13–15% of women who are literate. I think that's an area that we all have to focus on and ensure the education access is there. Thirdly, I think the political process. Women, and we're seeing it with this election, women have got to be more engaged in the political process. They have to have their voice heard in Parliament. We have to have those female parliamentarians there, those female members of the Provincial Council, and they must be equipped to play a very strong role, because their numbers will always be smaller than the male representation. So they need to be equipped to play a very strong role. And then the fourth area would be economic empowerment. And I think that we have to look at ways to help women start their own businesses, take their talent in doing rugs or jewelry or scarves or whatever it may be, and turn that into a business. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's something in the IT area, maybe it's something having to do with the retail area, but whatever the business opportunity is. I just noticed this woman who's just started a taxi service here in Kabul. I mean, yes. These are wonderful models to show to young girls. So I think women's economic empowerment is very important, so that women have the opportunity to contribute to their families as well financially. Sure. Not to replace their husbands, of course, but to contribute as well. So I think those 4 areas: security, literacy, education, engagement in the political process, and then economic empowerment. What do I think the future holds for Afghan women? I think it's whatever Afghan women want it to be. They have the strength, they have the determination, they certainly have the resilience after having survived these last 3-4 decades. Now it's a matter of, I think, focusing, knowing that they can do it, and getting the education and insisting on the political process and the governance process to provide them the opportunity to reach the potential they have. So I think the future is very bright. And I think I would also say that the progress of Afghan women has become a symbol, I think, for women all around the world. So I think it's important that Afghan women have a brighter future, because I think if Afghan women have a brighter future, women around the world have a better chance of a brighter future.
Great. Thank you so much for your inputs. I also wanted to know, aside from the questions that are more focused on the women's rights and other issues, you are the only female ambassador in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Among all the international community alliance in Afghanistan. And I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, aside from other aspects, other questions.
Okay. Well, first of all, I am the only female country ambassador. The Aga Khan Foundation has an ambassador here, Nurjahan Mawani, who also has the status of ambassador, but I'm the only country female ambassador. So, about myself. I grew up in a rural area, in one of the poorest regions of Canada, in a rural community. There were 9 kids in my family. My father came from a family of 12, big families. We had no money. Everybody was poor. But we had good values. My parents were very focused on education and being good parents. And we lived in a strong community where people supported one another. And so I managed to get a very good education in spite of the fact that my family had no money, and as did all my brothers and sisters, as a matter of fact. Because at that time, the Canadian government supported students to go to university, and you could get a student loan, and then you paid it back to the government later. So I think I also was fortunate that at that time, the governance for education was very strong. So I used to run a couple of businesses in my early days when I was very young, and succeeded at that, and then I became very interested in government. And I joined government at a time when the environmental issues were very strong. So I became very involved as an environmentalist, as somebody working in energy issues. And then I moved from that to economic development, and I was very, very committed to my region of the country, which had been traditionally poorer than the other regions, developing a stronger economic independence. And so I did that work for about 10 years, and then became more interested in trade development and international investment, and joined the Foreign Service. And I've had postings in Japan and in Washington. I just came from Washington, where I was deputy ambassador. And I have wanted to come to Afghanistan for 4 or 5 years, and finally I convinced my government to take me out of Washington and let me come here. So
that's great to know about you. Following to what you just mentioned, you started your own business.
Yes.
And you were working for your own business, and then you changed and came to the government.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your experiences as a businesswoman, and then shifting to government. What made you to come to government?
I loved having my own business. I was very young, and so, when you're young, you think you can do anything. But it was a wonderful professional experience, because when you have your own business, you learn a couple of important things. One is you learn to work hard.
Right.
You know that you must work hard in order for the business to survive. And secondly, you learn how to work with people. Because your business can't survive if you are not good at client service, if you don't know how to work with people. And you learn that your staff are your most important asset. So those were really good things for me to learn, to carry forward in the rest of my career. So I had a tourism business, a fishing hunting business for a period of time, and then I had a consulting business. And both of those gave me a tremendous opportunity to learn how to really be a strong manager. And then the government offered me a terrific opportunity. This was when I first became very interested in the environmental movement. I transferred into government at a fairly senior level and worked on the whole area of energy management and energy conservation. And then from there, did economic development work, and then chose to join the Foreign Service. I joined government because I felt I wanted to contribute more to my society. Having my business was very exciting and I enjoyed it, but I wanted to be more involved in policy issues, and I wanted to look at some changes that I felt that Canada needed to make, and to be part of our federal government gave me that opportunity. After several years doing that, then having the opportunity to join the Foreign Service and go and represent Canada around the world was a tremendous opportunity, and I couldn't resist it because I really do think Canada has many good things to offer. I never refer to Canada as the greatest country on earth because I don't think you should ever describe any one country as being the greatest. But I do refer to Canada as Canada the good, because I think we do have many good examples of how a country can be governed with many different languages, many different ethnic groups, many different religions, many different issues across a wide range of country, and we can come together on those issues to try to solve problems in a very constructive way. So I think we're a good model, and it's a very exciting thing to represent Canada in other parts of the world. It also became very obvious to me that now we are not just citizens of our own country, we're citizens of the world. And so to work in the Foreign Service, you have the opportunity to really work at that level every day, because we're so connected to one another that what happens in your country matters in my country, and vice versa. So being in the Foreign Service gives you a chance to really be a global citizen, and it's very exciting.
Thank you so much. I think this is a great decision in terms of turning to be in the government. Yes. Thank you. As an Afghan,
when I retire, I'll go back and set up another business.
That's great. That's a good.
Maybe in Afghanistan. Maybe between Afghanistan and Canada. Yes.
My last question, Your Excellency. As an Afghan, my biggest worry or tension is the post-2014 issue and the withdrawal of the international community. I mean, the military side. As a representative of a government in Afghanistan, what is your message for the people of Afghanistan for post-2014 matter?
Well, what I would say to the people of Afghanistan from the Canadian perspective is we are here. We are still here, and we plan to stay as long as the Afghan people want us to work in partnership on many of these issues that we've spoken about. All that has happened in 2014 is a military shift. Our military has transitioned out. It is a military shift. Diplomatically, on a development level, on an economic partnership level, there is much work for us to do together. And the Embassy of Canada is going to be staying here to continue to work in those areas. We've had a wonderful experience with the Afghan people in the last 10 or 12 years. We see the strength, we see the resilience, we see the talent. We're going to continue this relationship with Afghanistan for many more years to come. And I am sure that is true of many others in the international community.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your time and the words you expressed, and the hopes for the future of Afghanistan, and the great work the Canadian government is going to do in post-2014, and hopefully through you in this post. Thank you so much for giving us our time, and we are hopeful that in future we will also be engaged in regards to the activities relevant to the women issues and in the justice sector and so on. So I wish you good luck, and I hope we meet again in the future.
I'm sure we'll meet again in the future. I think you've given me some more work to do, so I look forward to our next topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.